The conference room was packed when I walked in. 18 people sat around the long table, and I could tell immediately that something was wrong. The air felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. Elaine Porter stood at the front, her laptop connected to the projector. She didn't acknowledge me as I took my seat near the back. She just clicked to the next slide. And there it was. Name. Not mentioned casually. Not buried in a footnote. Right there in the center of the screen, highlighted in red, with an arrow pointing to a column labeled, Data Source Error. This discrepancy, Elaine said, her voice calm and clear, originated from Kira Donovan's quarterly analysis. The room went silent. That kind of silence that feels louder than any noise. I felt every pair of eyes turn toward me. My stomach dropped. My hands gripped the edge of my notebook so hard that my knuckles turned white. I hadn't made an error. I knew exactly what the numbers said. I had checked them 3 times before submitting. But somehow, in front of the entire senior leadership team, I was being blamed for a mistake I didn't make. Elaine finally looked at me. Not with concern. Not with confusion. She looked at me with something that made my blood run cold. Satisfaction. She smiled slightly, tilting her head. Kira, would you like to explain where things went wrong? My throat felt tight. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to defend myself. To stand up and tell everyone that this wasn't my fault. To correct the lie before it became the truth. But something about the way she stood there, so confident, so prepared, told me she expected me to panic. She wanted me to argue, to look defensive, to make myself seem guilty by protesting too much. So instead I took a slow breath and nodded once. I'll review my work and get back to you, I said quietly. Elaine's smile widened just a fraction. She thought she'd won. She thought I'd accepted the blame without a fight. What she didn't know was that I already had every piece of evidence I needed to prove exactly what had happened. And I wasn't going to waste it by throwing it at her in a room full of people who weren't ready to listen yet. My name is Kira Donovan, and this is the story of how my boss tried to destroy my career by making me the scapegoat in a report that would cost the company millions. But what she didn't know was that I had kept every email, every dataset, every time-stamped file that showed exactly what she had done. She thought she could bury me with a lie. Instead, she buried herself with the truth. This is how it happened. I'm a senior data analyst at Ashford Consulting. I've been with the company for 11 years. I don't cause drama. I don't play office politics. I keep my head down, do excellent work, and let my results speak for themselves. That's exactly why Elaine chose me. I was quiet, reliable, the kind of person who wouldn't make a scene. The perfect scapegoat. Elaine Porter had been my manager for 2 years. She was ambitious, polished, and always knew exactly what to say in meetings. Leadership loved her. She spoke their language. She made things sound simple and profitable, even when they weren't. But beneath that polished surface, Elaine had a problem. She cut corners. She smoothed over concerns. And when things went wrong, she needed someone to blame. That meeting where she put my name on the screen. That was supposed to be the moment my career ended. The moment she protected herself by sacrificing me. What she didn't expect was that I had been preparing for this moment for months. 3 weeks before that meeting, I had sent Elaine an email. It was professional. No accusations. Just a simple observation about the quarterly revenue forecast we were preparing. Hi Elaine, I've noticed a discrepancy between the raw intake data and the projected revenue numbers in the Q2 report. The variance is approximately 8%, which could indicate a calculation error or a data integration issue. Should I flag this for review before we submit? I attached the relevant spreadsheets with my analysis highlighted in yellow. I waited for her response. Came 6 hours later. Kira, thanks for the diligence, but let's not overcomplicate this. The board wants consistency with our previous forecasts. We'll keep the numbers as they are. No need to flag it. I read that email 3 times, my stomach sinking with each pass. She was telling me to ignore a significant error. To leave it in the report. To pretend I hadn't seen it. That was the first moment I knew I needed to protect myself. I didn't ignore Elaine's instruction. But I didn't follow it blindly either. I ran the numbers again, this time pulling the data directly from the source systems instead of using the compiled files Elaine had provided. I wanted to see if the discrepancy was just a calculation error or something deeper. What I found made my hands go cold. The raw data didn't match the forecast at all. The numbers Elaine wanted in the report had been adjusted, made to look better than reality. It wasn't a small mistake. It was a deliberate alteration. And if the board approved the report based on those false numbers, the company would make decisions that could cost millions. Someone would take the fall when the truth came out. And Elaine had already decided that someone would be me. I saved every version of the data I pulled. I timestamped every file. I documented every step of my analysis. I kept copies of the original emails. I didn't know yet how I would use them, but I knew I'd need them. Back in that conference room, Elaine kept talking. Kira was responsible for the dataset compilation, she explained to the executives. Any variance in the forecast can be traced back to her methodology. She clicked to another slide. This one showed a comparison chart. On one side, the accurate forecast. On the other, what she labeled as my flawed analysis. Except the flawed analysis was actually the correct one. She had flipped them. I sat perfectly still, watching her present my accurate work as the error and her manipulated version as the truth. She wasn't making a mistake. She was executing a plan. And judging by the way the executives were nodding, it was working. My chest felt tight. My face felt hot. But I didn't speak. I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself. Because I understood something important in that moment. People who rush to assign blame are usually hiding something. And hidden things have a way of coming to light when you know where to look. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Elaine wrapped up with a reassuring tone, promising the executives that she would work with Kira to ensure accuracy going forward. Translation. She would manage me more closely to prevent me from exposing the truth. As people filed out of the room, a few colleagues gave me sympathetic glances. One person, Marcus from finance, squeezed my shoulder as he passed. "That was rough," he whispered. "Let me know if you need anything." I nodded, managing a weak smile. Elaine packed up her laptop slowly, waiting until the room was empty except for the two of us. "I know that was difficult," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But leadership needed to understand where the breakdown occurred." I looked at her directly. "I understand." She studied my face for a moment, probably looking for anger or tears. She found neither. "Good," she said finally. "Let's move forward." She left the room, her heels clicking confidently against the tile floor. I sat there alone for another minute, staring at the empty screen where my name had been displayed. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. What Elaine didn't know was that I had a habit. A careful, methodical habit that I developed over years of working with data. I kept duplicates of everything. Not because I was paranoid. Not because I expected to be betrayed. Just because I'd learned that in data analysis, you always need to be able to trace your work back to the source. Every dataset I pulled had a timestamp. Every email I sent was archived. Every version of every report I created was saved with a clear version number and date. 6 months earlier, I'd started saving local copies of all the files Elaine approved. Not because I suspected her specifically. Just because I'd seen too many situations where approved work mysteriously changed after the fact. Elaine had my final reports. She had my conclusions. She had the pretty charts and polished presentations. But she didn't have my source trail. She didn't have the raw pulls. She didn't have the original, unmodified data that showed exactly what I had actually analyzed. And that was going to make all the difference. The next morning I found an email from Elaine in my inbox. Time-stamped 11:47 p.m. the night before. "Kira, compliance may request source files related to the Q2 analysis. Can you send me copies of the final datasets you used? Want to make sure we're prepared." I read it twice and felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not fear. Clarity. She was nervous. She was trying to figure out what I had, what I could prove. She thought if she could get my source files, she could either destroy them or create her own version that supported her story. I wrote back immediately. Of course, Elaine. I'll compile everything exactly as I pulled it from the source systems. Should have it ready by end of day tomorrow. I meant every word. I would send her exactly what I pulled. The truth. The unaltered, time-stamped, documented truth. But I wouldn't send it just to her. I would send it to the right people. The right time. Patience, I reminded myself. Let her version of the story solidify first. Let people commit to believing her. Because the harder they commit, the more devastating it will be when the truth proves them wrong. I spent the next day organizing everything. Every raw data pull. Every version history log. Every email exchange with Elaine about the discrepancies. I created a master folder with clear labels. Original source data with timestamps. Elaine's modified forecast with her approval emails. My analysis showing discrepancies. Dated 3 weeks before the meeting. Email trail showing my concerns and her directive to proceed anyway. It was all there. Clean. Organized. Undeniable. I didn't rush. I let a full 36 hours pass before doing anything with it. Long enough for Elaine's narrative to settle into people's minds. Long enough for the executives to discuss it in their own meetings. Long enough for her to feel safe. People believe the first story they hear. They defend it. They build their understanding around it. And when you finally show them the truth, the cognitive dissonance hits harder than any accusation ever could. On Thursday afternoon, I got a call from compliance. Not an email. Phone call. Hi Kira, this is Bethany from the compliance department. We're conducting a routine review of the Q2 revenue report. I understand you were the primary analyst on the dataset. That's correct, I said calmly. We'd like to request copies of the original source files you used, along with any correspondence related to the analysis. Standard procedure for reports of this size. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. I have everything prepared already. I can send it within the hour. Perfect, Bethany said. Thanks for being so responsive. I hung up and took a deep breath. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for. I attached the master folder to an email addressed to Bethany in compliance. Then I copied the CFO and the head of internal audit. Not Elaine. She would find out soon enough. I wrote a brief note. Attached are all source materials related to the Q2 revenue analysis, including raw data pulls, version histories, and relevant email correspondence. Please let me know if you need any clarification. Then I hit send. 2 hours later, Elaine appeared at my desk. She was smiling. Too brightly. Too casually. Hey Kira, just checking in. How's everything going? I looked up from my screen. Everything's fine. Just working on the August projections. Good, good. She leaned against my cubicle wall, trying to look relaxed. I heard compliance reached out about the Q2 files. Yes, I said neutrally. I sent them everything they requested. Her smile flickered. Just for a second. Oh, great. Did you send me a copy too? I sent it to compliance and the audit team, I replied. I assumed they'd forward it to relevant stakeholders. Elaine's jaw tightened slightly. Right, course. Well, if they have any questions, let me know. We're a team. Absolutely, I said, turning back to my screen. She stood there for another moment, as if she wanted to say something else. But she didn't. She just walked away, her confidence finally starting to crack. The email came Friday morning. Not from compliance. From the CFO's office. Please join us for a data review meeting today at 2 p.m. Conference room B, attendance required. Kira Donovan, Elaine Porter, Bethany Cross, compliance, and senior leadership. No agenda. No context. Just a meeting scheduled with less than 6 hours notice. I knew what it meant. They'd reviewed the data. They'd seen the discrepancies. They'd read the emails. And now they wanted to hear both sides of the story. I arrived 5 minutes early. The room was already filling up. Bethany from compliance sat at one end with her laptop open. The CFO, Nathan Sterling, sat at the head of the table. Two other executives I recognized but didn't work with directly filled the remaining seats. Elaine walked in exactly at 2 p.m., carrying her tablet and a leather portfolio. She looked composed, professional. But I noticed her hand shook slightly as she set down her things. She still didn't know exactly what I'd sent. But she was starting to realize it was more than she'd bargained for. Nathan Sterling started the meeting without any pleasantries. "We've been reviewing the Q2 revenue analysis," he said, looking between Elaine and me. "There are some significant inconsistencies we need to understand." Bethany pulled up a screen share. The raw data populated on the projector. Then she overlaid it with the forecast that had been presented to the board. The numbers didn't match. Not even close. "Can someone explain," Nathan continued, "why the approved forecast shows 8% higher revenue than what the source data actually supports?" Elaine cleared her throat. The forecast was based on projected growth trends and market analysis, not just historical data. "But the report stated it was data-driven," Bethany countered. "It specifically cited Kira's analysis as the foundation." Nathan turned to me. "Kira, can you walk us through what you actually submitted?" I opened my laptop and pulled up the original files. I pulled the raw data directly from our intake systems on May 3rd. The analysis showed that our actual revenue was tracking 8% below the previous quarter's forecast. I flagged this discrepancy in an email to Elaine on May 5th. I displayed the email on my screen. Everyone could see the date, the time, and Elaine's response telling me not to flag the issue. Elaine's face went pale. That email was taken out of context," she stammered. "I was trying to avoid creating panic before we had all the information." Bethany pulled up another document. According to the version history, the forecast numbers were manually adjusted on May 8th. 3 days after Kira flagged the discrepancy. She showed the edit log. It clearly showed Elaine's username making changes to the revenue column. "Those were just formatting adjustments," Elaine said quickly. "Not substantive changes." "The numbers changed by exactly 8%, Bethany replied. "That's not formatting." Nathan leaned forward. "Elaine, did you alter the forecast data after Kira raised concerns about its accuracy?" Elaine opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. She'd been so confident that I would never be able to prove what happened, that my concerns would be dismissed as misunderstanding or overthinking. She hadn't counted on me keeping every single piece of evidence, every timestamp, every email, every version of every file. The room was completely silent. Nathan looked at the documents on the screen, then back at Elaine. "I'm going to ask you directly. Did you instruct Kira to ignore a known data discrepancy, then alter the numbers yourself?" Elaine's foot tapped against the floor. Once, then again. A nervous rhythm. "I was under a lot of pressure," she finally said. "The board wanted consistency. They wanted to see growth. I thought I was helping the company by presenting a more optimistic picture. By falsifying data," Nathan said. "It wasn't a question. By adjusting projections," Elaine corrected weakly. "And when the audit started," Bethany added, "you blamed Kira publicly. You told the senior leadership team that she was responsible for the errors." Elaine didn't respond. What could she say? Every word she'd spoken in that first meeting was now proven false by the documentation I'd provided. The executives exchanged glances. I could see them recalculating everything they'd believed just days ago, questioning their own judgment, realizing they'd nearly ruined an innocent employee's career based on a lie. Nathan pulled up the email Elaine had sent after my warning. He read it aloud, slowly and deliberately. "Let's not overcomplicate this. The board wants consistency. We'll keep the numbers as they are. No need to flag it." He looked at Elaine. "This is a direct instruction to conceal a material discrepancy in a financial report. Do you understand how serious that is? Elaine's hands were shaking now. I made a mistake. I was trying to manage expectations. I never meant for it to become this big of an issue. You made it this big, Bethany said quietly, when you chose to blame Kira instead of admitting the truth. That statement hung in the air like smoke. Elaine looked around the room, searching for allies. She found none. Every face was either neutral or openly disappointed. Why was Kira specifically named in your presentation? Nathan asked. Why did you put her name on that slide? Elaine's voice was barely a whisper. I needed to explain the discrepancy. You thought she'd accept the blame quietly, Nathan finished. You thought she wouldn't fight back. Elaine said nothing. 'Cause he was right. Elaine tried one more defense. It was weak and everyone knew it. I was doing what I thought was best for the company, she said. Sometimes leadership requires difficult decisions. Yes, I should have been more transparent, but my intentions were good. Nathan shook his head. Your intentions were self-preservation. And you were willing to destroy someone else's career to achieve it. Bethany closed her laptop. I'll be recommending a full investigation into all reports Elaine has overseen in the past 2 years. We need to determine if this is an isolated incident or a pattern. Elaine's eyes widened. That's not necessary. This was one situation. One mistake. One lie, Nathan corrected. Followed by a deliberate attempt to scapegoat an employee who was actually doing her job correctly. He turned to me. Kira, I apologize. On behalf of the leadership team, I apologize for what you went through in that first meeting. You did everything right. You flagged the problem, you documented your concerns, and you maintained your integrity throughout. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The relief washing over me was almost overwhelming. Nathan looked back at Elaine. We need to speak privately. Please step outside for a moment. Elaine stood on shaking legs and walked out of the conference room. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Nathan looked at the remaining executives. I want a formal review of all data practices in Elaine's department. I want to know if anyone else knew about this. And I want to know how we missed it. One of the executives spoke up. Kira's documentation was exemplary. If she hadn't kept such thorough records, we might never have discovered the truth. Which raises the question, Nathan said, looking at me, why she felt the need to protect herself in the first place. I chose my words carefully. I've learned that in data analysis, you need to be able to prove your work. Not because you expect people to doubt you, but because accuracy matters. I kept records because it's the right practice. Not because I expected this situation. Nathan nodded slowly. Well, your diligence may have prevented a much larger disaster. If that false forecast had guided board decisions, we could have faced serious financial and legal consequences. The meeting wrapped up quickly after that. I was told to take the rest of the day off. To rest. Process. As I gathered my things, Bethany caught my eye. Thank you, she said simply. I managed a small smile. Just doing my job. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, just breathing. Letting the tension drain from my shoulders. Letting the reality sink in. Good one. Not by fighting. Not by shouting. But by being prepared. By being thorough. By keeping evidence that proved the truth. My phone buzzed. An email from Nathan Sterling. Kira, please report to my office Monday morning at 9 a.m. We'd like to discuss your role going forward. My stomach flipped. Going forward. Did that mean I still had a job? Or were they planning to quietly push me out to avoid the awkwardness of the situation? I wouldn't know until Monday. So I drove home, ordered takeout, and tried not to think about it. Monday morning came too quickly. I dressed carefully, professionally. I arrived at Nathan's office at exactly 9 a.m. He wasn't alone. The head of HR, Patricia Monroe, sat in the other chair. My heart sank. HR meant bad news. But then Nathan smiled. Actually smiled. Kira, please sit down. We wanted to discuss some changes. I sat bracing myself. Elaine submitted her resignation Friday evening, he continued. Effective immediately. She cited personal reasons, but we all know the truth. I nodded slowly. So she was gone. Which brings us to you, Patricia said. We need someone to take over her responsibilities. Someone with integrity, accuracy, and the courage to speak up when something's wrong. My breath caught. We'd like to offer you the senior manager position, Nathan said. With full authority over the data analysis department. Your own team. Your own projects. And the trust of leadership to do what's right, even when it's difficult. I stared at them. You're offering me Elaine's job. We're offering you the job you should have had, Nathan corrected. Elaine blocked your promotion twice in the past year. We found the paperwork. She told us you weren't ready. But clearly you were more than ready. The promotion came with a significant raise. My own office. A team of 4 analysts who would report to me. And most importantly, direct access to senior leadership. Nathan walked me through the details. We're also implementing new protocols for data review. Every significant analysis will require source documentation, version controls, email trails, the things you were already doing as standard practice. Essentially, Patricia added, we're making your methodology the company standard. I felt something shift in my chest. Not quite pride. Something quieter. Validation. 4 years, I'd kept those detailed records without anyone noticing or caring. It was just how I worked. Thorough. Careful. Maybe a little excessive. But when it mattered most, those records had saved me. They'd revealed the truth. They'd protected not just my career, but the company's integrity. I accept, I said simply. Nathan extended his hand. Welcome to leadership, Kira. We're lucky to have you. As I left his office, I passed Elaine's old workspace. It was already being cleaned out. Her nameplate was gone. Her photos removed. Like she'd never been there at all. I didn't feel joy at seeing it. I didn't feel revenge or satisfaction. I just felt done. 2 weeks later I moved into my new office. It had windows that overlooked the city. Proper desk. Space for my books and my coffee maker. My team came by to introduce themselves. They were nervous, clearly worried about what kind of manager I'd be after everything that had happened. I sat them down and told them the truth. I'm not going to ask you to cut corners, I said. I'm not going to tell you to ignore discrepancies. If you find something wrong, I want to know. Even if it's inconvenient. Even if it's difficult. Because accuracy matters more than appearances. They relaxed visibly. One of them, a young analyst named Cameron, spoke up. We heard what happened with Elaine. What she tried to do to you. It was messed up. He nodded. It was. But it taught me something important. The truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be documented. Over the next few months, I rebuilt the department's practices from the ground up. New review processes. Better documentation standards. Clear communication protocols. The work that had saved me became the foundation for protecting everyone else. 6 months after that terrible meeting where my name appeared on the screen, I sat in a different conference room. This time I was the one presenting. I walked the leadership team through our new data integrity framework. The systems we'd implemented. The safeguards against manipulation or error. Nathan listened carefully, nodding at key points. When I finished, he smiled. This is exactly what we needed. Thank you, Kira. As I packed up my laptop, I thought about Elaine. About how confident she'd been that day. How certain that she'd successfully shifted the blame onto someone who wouldn't fight back. She'd been right about one thing. I didn't fight back. Not with anger. Not with accusations. Not with drama. I fought back with the truth. With documentation. With patience. And in the end, that was more powerful than any confrontation could have been. I learned something valuable from that experience. Something I'd carry with me for the rest of my career. You don't win by shouting. You don't win by being the loudest or the most aggressive. You win by being undeniable. By keeping records. By staying calm. By letting the facts speak for themselves. Because when you have the truth on your side, properly documented and carefully preserved, you don't need to say much at all. The evidence does all the talking. And unlike people, evidence doesn't lie.